So today in my series of chats with members of the Grooveschool crew, I'm here with Eddie Quinn, who's trustee of Grooveschool and been involved for some time now. And I thought we'd get on to talk about that side of your life in a bit, but I just really want to get to what your background is, because one thing I'm getting from all these conversations is, you know, people had this real interest and passion in music well before they arrived on the Grooveschool scene. What's your background?
Yeah, hey Dave. From Cork City originally, a place called Mayfield, and Cork was a very musical city when I was growing up in the kind of early to mid 90s, and really good music scene there in all genres. House music, hip hop, soul, funk, reggae, drum and bass, as well as indie bands and all different types of music. So quite creative, and I suppose one of how I got into music myself was probably just with friends that I hung around with at school and college, and I started buying records at maybe 17 or 18. The record shop at that time was Comet Records. That's where everybody went for their vinyl. Just really, since then have still been buying records and buying music.
It sounds like it was a real kind of melting pot of different musical styles.
Yeah, and it was, probably the most famous DJs that have come out of Cork are Fish Go Deep, Greg Dowland and Shane Johnson. They ran a night there called Sweat at Sir Henry's, and they're still going. Probably 30 odd years later, they're still playing really, really good house music. Mark Walsh would have been another DJ that kind of produces under the moniker Question Mark. Stevie G, who is another really famous and kind of iconic guy in Cork. Hip hop, soul, funk, and he does a lot of good work with youth as well, actually, in Cork City at the moment. A lot of good techno nights there as well. Bass Odyssey were a drum and bass crew, that were really popular and had some international success as well. It was a great time to be. It was a great time to be in Cork. It was a great time. Literally 7 nights a week. There was music. There was gigs. There was DJs playing, and got to see some really good acts then as well. I remember Sasha Digweed did their Northern Exposure tour.
Oh God, I remember that.
In Sir Henry's, and I managed to get the actual poster out of one of the adverts as well. So very, very lucky, and still have some friends, that are music heads that we still kind of buy music together.
It's kind of a special time really for that. And did it sort of lead you into DJing? And actually getting more involved with the music itself?
Exactly, yeah. So there was, that started buying records for maybe at 16 or 17, and eventually then was lucky enough to get on and play on a radio station which was actually called Pure FM at the time. I suppose the most famous radio station in Cork was called Radio Friendly, and for the DJs, there were so many DJs in Cork that we were able to set up a second kind of pirate radio station as well. So I played on that station for a couple of years with a couple of really good people as well.
Right.
And then we'd have the odd couple of club nights with that radio station as well. And then I actually moved to London around 2001. And kind of got in with some friends as well here that were buying music and buying, still records at the time, actually when I was at work with Credit Suisse, met another really good guy, a chap called Paul Cardosi, who used to do a lot of DJing in his day as well. And we actually ended up setting up our own night with another chap called Simon, and we used to play up by the Light Bar. In just off Liverpool Street. So we used to do a gig there every quarter, So yeah, so good times.
Yeah, good times, and kind of you were there right at the peak time, certainly in terms of Cork, but even London in a way.
Yeah. So I think the beauty of London at that time, I like all genres of music. I buy all different types of music as well. My main preference would be house, techno, and ambient, but I went through a phase of buying just breakbeat for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
That was the time the Plump DJs were really good. Ronnie Pilgrim, Meet Katie,
Stanton Warriors,
exactly. Yeah, and I think that was just the beauty of London. It was the eclectic mix as well, and the volume of clubs as well, and so I used to go to Fabric a lot initially, which was very enjoyable, and it was kind of really good to see Terry Francis for the first time, Craig Richards for the first time as well.
Terry Francis is still playing out quite a lot.
He's still playing out, and with Craig Richards doing these Houghton Festival as well, so they're still, they're still legends as far as I'm concerned.
So you sort of built up that experience, and it encompasses a lot of genres, a lot of different places and venues and so on.
Yeah.
And you'd come to London.
Yeah.
So how did that lead to you, first of all, getting involved with Grooveschool?
Well, I met Richie, who runs Grooveschool, actually through a program that we both signed up to called Finish More Music, and I think it was 2019. We had a get-together in London, and that was a really good program run by a chap called Keith Mills, and it says it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a program to help you to actually finish more music, because I think a lot of producers like myself kind of were great at getting ideas down for tracks, but not actually having the skills or the experience and actually being able to finish a track. And he ran a kind of a 3-part program, and there was a lot of people kind of signed up to it from all over the world, and I think there was close to 100 people at the event in London. One guy even travelled from Japan.
Wow.
That's where I met Richie. Richie taught me what he did, which I was very interested in, which is working with youth and working with music, and then I started acting as a volunteer. Initially I used Ableton as on the software side, and initially it was just kind of coming in and helping out with the students and helping them through Ableton.
Right. But you've also done radio presenting.
We've done radio presenting as well. Actually, when I was in Dublin, I used to play on an online station called Power FM. Really good group of people there as well. I used to love that. And along with Grooveschool here, we've kind of done a multitude of events. We, during COVID and lockdown, we actually moved the classes online and had some of our sessions online. We've done a couple of charity events online as well. Techno Festival a couple of years ago, which was quite successful and very enjoyable. It's kind of a bit of everything and anything.
Yeah, in a way that's been one of the themes from these chats, is that people come in and there's actually a number of different options for them to choose from.
Yeah.
In terms of what they're most interested in and what they most want to get experience of. And that seems to be a kind of common theme, really.
Exactly.
It's not just one thing that you're learning.
Exactly that, and I think the beauty of what we have here at Grooveschool, we've got so many different elements to it. We've got the music production, we've got podcasting, we've got a hardware, we've got the DJing. We've worked with some of the students previously in helping them prepare sets for gigs that they were playing at, and kind of really challenging them on thinking about what track they're playing and why.
Yeah.
What type of atmosphere they're trying to get with the set. And that's not to say that they can't bring in a bit of spontaneity or anything, but it's, I suppose, I kind of come from the time when it was really important to understand. your tracks and understand and know your tunes, you know.
I think it still is.
And it still is, but I think it's a bit of a lost art with, you know, not necessarily a lost art, but I don't think it's emphasised enough as it was.
It's interesting that, because we've talked a lot about the resources here and the different things that, you know, the groups that come in can learn from and pick up. And there's obviously the technical learning, which is really important. But what you're talking about is something more than that. It's almost that instinct for working out what's going to make a floor respond and really start moving. And that, I guess, is quite an important part of the mentor's job.
I think so, you know. I think it is, because there's pros and cons. I've gone to places and I've played gigs where I know exactly what tune I want to do, and just for that gig, that's the reason why. But you know, there's kind of nothing better than maybe playing your first 3 or 4 tunes, having them maybe prepared to set yourself down, and then saying, okay, I'm just going to be able to take whatever comes, you know. But actually, I think you do need to know your music to be able to do that, you know. So I think that's kind of something that I like to, you know, to get across to the students as well, is, you know, spend some time listening to the music and enjoy it, you know. Yeah.
It's interesting because you talk about that aspect of the mentoring role and what you can bring over and above the pure technical abilities. But the only way to really test that out is in a live gig or some kind of presentation of that music. And that's another theme that I've picked up on in these chats, is that's a big part of what Groove School's actually offering these groups.
Yeah, and I think it is because, you know, some of the students have played at Royal Albert Hall, you know, Lambert Country Show, and, you know, a whole host of other gigs and events. And I suppose we want to ensure that they're kind of comfortable in representing themselves as a DJ as well, and that that they're taking pride in what they're doing and how they're doing it, you know. And you're right, I don't think, you know, you can learn the technical skills, you know, you can learn that with kind of practice and a hard slog, but I think you can also do the same on actually knowing your music.
Absolutely.
And I think that adds just another bow, you know. That can be a far more rewarding experience for the DJ themselves, but obviously also for people at the gigs and the events, you know.
Yeah, I think it also brings in the motivation aspect, is if all this leads up to a live performance, then it sort of motivates you to get even better, because otherwise you're going to flop terribly. And
exactly, like I know I did the first couple of gigs I ever played.
Me too. If I got it right, it was purely by accident.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember the first time, actually, my first gig that I played out, I used to have a set of cam decks, and when I went to the club, it was Technics. And I just couldn't get used to the actual pitch, you know, the different ways of the pitch, and I completely and utterly bombed, you know.
Right.
But yeah, we just try and help them. You know, it's different today now with CDJs and AutoSync and all that. But no, like a lot of our students, you know, they'll learn how to use the decks. They'll learn how to use a mixer properly. You know, they'll learn how to use the CDJs, etc. I think the thing that impressed me the most when I started coming around first was the amount of hardware setup that we have here.
Yeah.
And the amount and the quality of it, and like the live jamming that the students were able to do, you know, kind of blew me away. I'm very much kind of a software Ableton, maybe 1 or 2 synths hooked up. But yeah, I mean, like we had 2 or 3 of our students just playing with drum machines, synths, samplers, and just completely and utterly improvising, you know.
And doing it together.
Yeah,
because that's something else, is DJing can be quite a lonely activity, or a very solo one. But when you can actually work with other people and create something totally unique,
exactly,
that's a whole different experience.
Yeah. And we even did some, you know, we've done quite a lot of kind of programs as well over the years, which have been really interesting. And, you know, with some of one program that I really enjoyed with the students was we got them to work on different parts of each other's tracks. So, for example, I personally love just kind of creating samples, creating my own sample bank. So I'll just hook up synthesizers, load of FX, and kind of jam and just record everything.
Right.
So we did a class on that, and then we got the students to basically swap over the samples that they've made. So everybody kind of either did an arrangement or a mix down on everybody else's track.
Yeah.
Then as well, so we ended up with kind of 3 different versions of each of the tracks.
Oh wow.
Which was
great.
really enjoyable,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, I think music is a communal experience, even though to learn it sometimes it's one-on-one or, just very focused time. But then it's when you can come together.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's back-to-back DJing. Sometimes it's, as you say, producing, using each other's rhythms and samples and so on.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings out another aspect of music, which is beyond just being a soulless activity.
Correct, and I think it's just even kind of getting feedback from other people as well, and kind of positive feedback. We encourage positive feedback from, amongst all of us, some of the students here have taught me quite a bit, especially on the hardware side. And yeah, it's we kind of really, what I enjoy out of it is that it is that proper community spirit, it kind of reminded me of the days when you were growing up in Cork, where you have a bit of, a good group of people, you come and listen to tunes, but kind of here we tend to be kind of, making them, and not only that, but just, we've got a nice record collection here as well, and just even flicking through some of all those records, that's a nice sample that we might be able to take, and and then kind of sharing those experiences as well. And they're always kind of leading up to some gig or kind of some event. We typically have something on at least once a quarter, so we're always kind of gearing up for something and prepping, which is quite good.
Just an interesting thought, because I kind of thought you might bring it back to your experiences in Cork and how in some ways it brings things full circle.
Yeah.
Of course, back then, pre-internet, it was all very much, in physical space.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. Right now in the 2020s, life's very different, especially for young people.
Yeah.
The other thing is, because I know from my experience, I got involved in music well before I was old enough to legally drink.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. You could, you got served in pubs. You were part of that scene quite early. Whereas now, if you're not 18, you're not really able to go to those kind of places.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it just occurred to me that's also another function which maybe Grooveschool can help to fill in, because it's changed that much.
Yeah, it is, and I think as well, Tuesdays was when the new records came in to come in, and it was like, we'd literally be queuing outside, and there would literally be, a queue of people, and you would have to wait until, whoever was in front of you went in, had a look, and was back out, So, these brilliant times, because there was that kind of sense of community. I remember even when I would be in university, the college was maybe 15-minute walk away, and you would be literally, the records are in at maybe 11 or 12 or whatever, and if you missed a lecture, you missed a lecture to go down and queue up, or else somebody else would queue up for you, and if they thought that that you might like something in particular, and they'd pick it up for you, so great sense of camaraderie, a great sense of kind of community, and
it's kind of reinventing that in a different type of space, isn't it?
Exactly, and different with tools and different technology, and it's still all about music, I mean, that's what we all have a love of, whether that's kind of listening to music, playing music, or making music. It's what kind of has brought us all together. You know?
You said you have these, when talking about the volunteering, you're involved in these sessions. It sounds quite intensive.
Yeah.
And very much, say, geared towards that live presentation.
Yeah.
But do you get any sense at all about whether that stays with those individuals after they leave?
I would think it does, because, as I said earlier, a few have played the Royal Albert Hall, and I mean, they were literally in the Royal Albert Hall, you know, at the school's music festival and DJing throughout the intervals. The year prior to that, I think they'd actually done a live performance as well. And we were talking, you know, teenagers, you know, which is, you know, so much kudos to them, you know. And I think I suppose what I try and emphasize, whether it's making music, you know, I try and emphasize being disciplined as well, even if it's doing 10 minutes a day, you know, but, you know, kind of keep that habit up of working on a track or making, just even making some samples. You know, you might throw out 90% of it and not use it, but you might hit, you know, a couple of really good pieces of music. Or if it's listening to some music, you know, if it's listening to a couple of tunes and saying, okay, hey, I've got a gig coming up, and okay, where would those tracks fit in? Do I want to start with those? Do I want it in the end? Do I want them, you know, in the middle? Or do I just want to keep them, you know, for and play them sporadically, you know? So I think it does give them, I think that it gives them kind of good life skills as well, in the sense of, you know, being a bit disciplined, practice, you know, being professional as well, you know, like, as silly as it may say, turning up on time, you know, and being supportive as well, being supportive of the other artists playing, and of the other students as well, you know. Right. So I know with a couple of them, the gigs give them a really, really good impetus to kind of want to go on and do more. Yeah. And we've got, you know, one of our students is kind of DJing regularly now, as well. Off the back of having done some gigs with us earlier, you know. Right. So yeah, I do think it's an experience that they'll always kind of cherish, you know.
And it's not just young people, is it? There's different groups with particular backgrounds or particular needs that you work with.
Exactly, you know. So recently we just finished up working with a autism charity, and we had 10 sessions over 10 weeks. I think it was 10 sessions in total over 10 weeks, which was very rewarding and very I think we did some really, really good work. We had 2 groups that were coming into the unit on Mondays, and we kind of broke them up into 3 different groups at any given time. One working on music production, one working on DJing, and the other working on podcasting. And I worked with a number of students on kind of putting tracks together as well. So that's like loading up Ableton, using a push as well, and helping the students like select sounds that they liked, and then getting some arrangements down off the back of that. And then, you know, I think with every student, we got at least 1 or 2 kind of arrangements down, you know. Still need a bit of work on to spread out and get into a kind of a finished track. But with everybody we got that worked on the production side, we got some really nice loops down. So, you know, some people would finish through, some of the students would finish through a loop maybe in a half an hour, which is more my style. Just get it down and quick, and move on to the next. And some wanted to work on a particular loop over the number of weeks. So, you know, we'd select bass sounds, drum samples, lay down some drum grooves, lay down some bass patterns, select some synthesizers, arpeggiators, select some pads, a little bit more percussion, and then get an arrangement down.
Yeah, sounds really fascinating. Yeah. And I mean, so you've done all that, but more recently you actually became a trustee.
I did,
of the organisation. Has that changed anything?
I don't get involved with the one-on-ones as much now, and I think I suppose the trustee, there's just a greater responsibility. It's a far wider perspective that you need to take, because there's so many elements to Grooveschool. Yeah. And I mean, you know, I suppose the dream is, you know, that we're working with schools, as well. I think we all know in the last 14 years, under previous governments, funding has been slashed. Libraries have been closed. The youth of today, I don't think have had a lot in the way of kind of services. And I think there's going to be there's a really good opportunity to kind of help out with schools as well, because to be fair, like if you're a teacher if you're a music teacher in a secondary school or a primary school, you're not necessarily going to understand Ableton and Push or Machina, etc. And there could be kids in there that that's the style of music. That's the music that they want. That's what they want to play. They're not necessarily interested in the piano or the triangle, or they'd like to be able to use software, and they'd like to be able to use samplers, and I think that's where we'd be able to help out significantly. And I know we do that with some schools already, but I do think there's a greater opportunity to do it at a more broad level.
Yeah, so I know it's been a challenge, certainly in terms of the amount of funding in the sector.
Yeah.
Do you think, I'll finish off with this question really, but in terms of, you've got now experience as a volunteer and a trustee, do you see the future being more positive and perhaps being more, providing these kind of resources to any community that needs it, really?
Absolutely. I think, definitely far more positive. And we've worked on, just to touch on, Dave, you said like the other groups that we've worked with previously, we've worked with people that were in care homes. As well, like really elderly people that have come into the unit,
right,
and downstairs, and where they were podcasting and where they were actually making tunes and DJing and talking about music. And we've done kind of private one-on-ones. We've done father and sons, and we've done mother and daughter days. But I think definitely there is a greater opportunity to get out into the wider community. The services that we provide,
right.
There's very few people that I think that don't like music.
Yeah.
Exactly. It brings so many different groups together. It brings so many communities together, and I think that we're very well positioned to be able to offer a multitude of services in that, whether that's at schools, whether that's even training teachers. On software, we've done a couple of sessions with people who were teachers and they've just started using Ableton, or if it's working with other community groups as well, where we can add an additional service and an additional outlet for not just youth, but for every member of a community and every member of society.
Yeah, it might be different music, but it's
correct.
the same passion.
Exactly that. Yeah.
You know what? Because we're ending on such an optimistic note, I'm not going to push it any further.
No worries.
But thanks for your time, Eddie.
No worries. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.